and I just want to briefly respond to Deputy O'Donoghue's remark, because he did ask me a question. I don't have a government car, Deputy, but I do have another car. I don't drive an EV at the moment, but I drove a Prius very happily for many years. The only reason I got rid of it is because it was destroyed with election posters and cable ties and scrapes and scratches in the back of it. I think it was I sold it because it was driven into the ground.
Question I asked.
I drove a Prius before. I say many people.
You don't have one.
I don't have a government car. Full stop.
Do you have an electric car?
I don't at the moment. I'd be very happy to drive one.
That's the only question I asked.
I'm in the market for a new car. If electric vehicle manufacturers put one.
I'd send you one just to down 6.
Thanks, Danny, but maybe we'll do business after the debate. But anyway, I'm actually very open to the idea, and I've test-driven a hybrid petrol EV model recently, and I did drive a Prius for many years. I'd say before many people did, and I found it extremely useful. I live in a suburban area, rural area actually, Kildare, and I said the only reason I got rid of it is because it practically fell apart after one election campaign too many. But I did have a good boot for posters. I can recommend on that basis. In any event, moving on to the substance of the amendments, I welcome the Minister's move to introduce, I suppose, a pause on some of these transitionary amendments, and I think it's very wise of the Minister to do so, but I think it also falls in line with a kind of twin-track policy being pursued by government overall in many of these areas. It's often said that it's good policy never to have a cliff edge on any aspect, be that a fiscal measure, be it an environmental measure, or be it anything, particularly that affects people's, I suppose, daily budgets. And I did have constituents in contact with me over this measure, and I did have concerns expressed on the BIK cliff edge that potentially was at play, particularly the rise to the 52,000 mileage. And I think the difficulty, and as one constituent, Mr McElderham, said to me, it was almost as if they were being incentivised to drive further, because to get the benefit, to get the full benefit, you had to go further, higher, faster, longer, and that was sort of counterintuitive, because you were being encouraged, incentivised financially to drive more miles to get the benefit, and that really probably went against the spirit of the legislation, if not the letter of it. So look, I very much welcome that that's been recognised by the Minister, and that this amendment looks to press the pause button on that. But I think it is part of a twin track. And in no more than it is responding to people like Mr McElderham, my constituency, and others like him around the country, and saying to them, look, we hear what you're saying, we hear the difficulties on a practical basis on a day-to-day, particularly at a time when inflation, including fuel inflation and including vehicle inflation, second-hand cars included, is increasing, and the cost of motoring is increasing because of cost of fuel and cost of living. Not only that, but in parallel, the government are rolling out charging infrastructure, the government are investing heavily in EV infrastructure, the government are putting in charging points, the government are putting in parking spaces for EV vehicles, and making it possible. And I have a friend of mine who bought an EV vehicle last year for commercial purposes. He's a solicitor, he's on the road a lot for court. When his accountant finished with it, he was basically being paid to take up the vehicle. There were so many grants and schemes afforded to him and granted to him, along with the tax survey, because he was using it for work purposes, that the vehicle practically cost him very, very little in terms of net funds. That's an example. That's a real-life example of a commercial user who bought a vehicle last year, fully electric vehicle. I've been in it. It's a fine vehicle, actually, as it happens. So there are people that are availing of this and making the move, and I think that makes this eminent sense. But I think that the approach being taken, as I say, there were real concerns expressed by real people at the apparent cliff edge nature of it. There was also a dichotomy potentially evident with some people who were travelling in urban areas, perhaps making trips around the city, be it Dublin or Cork or Galway, meeting to meeting, and others who were putting in the same, perhaps not the same miles on the clock, but the same hours in the vehicle. And some of them were benefiting from a BIK exemption, and some of them weren't. And there appeared to be perhaps an unfairness in that. So look, I very much welcome that the Minister has taken on board these points. I think it makes sense to press the pause button for 1 year, only. In parallel, roll out the infrastructure, roll out the policy supports that are there for electric vehicle infrastructure and the wider adoption of them, and stay core to that policy initiative, which, let's be honest, was introduced in 2008. In an earlier finance bill, but never commenced. This is not new. This has not been new to anyone in this House. Anyone that, I don't think in fairness members do, but anyone that doesn't realise we've got to get green is perhaps a bit green themselves, dare I say. Green behind the ears, maybe. Because this is where we're going, this is where the world is going, and we need to get on board. But anyway, I welcome the pause being applied for all the reasons I've said. Thank you, Caoirleach.